will have these functions. But I think it's very important the new role just for Senate after the constitutional reform. For first time, Senate will have to control the effects of European legislation on the territories. And I think it's very important also for the resources that we have to spend in our territories, because now Italy has some difficulties to spend the European resources, and regions have some difficulties to check how much they spend and why they don't spend it. And so I think if Senate will be able to control these effects, maybe we can spend better also the resources and to have the possibility to collaborate through the legislative process also bottom up. And now, just now, our Senate is very present in the European legislation with opinions about the European legislation, because in 2014 the Senate, the Italian Senate, has been the second more efficient chamber in Europe for opinions. The Senate have done 63 opinions, chamber 15, just to have a check, and only the Portugal Parliament has done better than our Senate. And so I think also in the future Senate can have a good role for that reason. I hope to have answered more or less all your questions. Okay, I hope in a good vote, and but just at the end I can know. I don't know if there are other questions.
Thank you, Minister, because you gave us offered to the student these big pictures as well as the technicalities to go inside also the inner reason about the constitutional reform. Now that the students have more stimulation about this, maybe we can pick up just 3 questions. Please, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Jean-Philippe de Rosier. I'm not a student, but full professor at the University of Rome in constitutional law. And vorrei ringraziare il signor Ministro per la sua presentazione e anche complimentarla per le qualche parola in francese che ci ha pronunciato all'inizio dell'intervento. Sono sicuro che parlo tutto in francese, ma anche in inglese era perfetto. Now let's turn back to English just to be understood by everybody. I would like to underline one point and add one question remark about this reform. What I wanted to underline is this strategy of your Prime Minister. Since he started his function as Prime Minister, he came to the Senate saying that I'm the first Prime Minister not able to be among of you because I'm too young to be senator in my country, but I'm the last Prime Minister asking you for confidence because I'm gonna kill you. And asking you to suicide yourself, as you underlined it. And this is, I don't have another word than crazy. It's really crazy because how can in Italy, i.e. a country with no majority fact as we have in France, how can it be that a minister comes and fulfill this reform to be sustained by the National Assembly, Chamber, and by the Senate, asking to the Senate to suicide himself. And this strategy led by the Prime Minister with being first the chief of the party and second to be Prime Minister, which is normally the case in every parliamentary regime in Europe, but not in Italy, and also not in France, was actually perfect, even if all during the debates, it was always to be questioned if will he succeed or not. So perhaps, I don't know if it's defense secrets, but perhaps you can give us some enlightenments on this strategy he had to fulfill this reform. Because perhaps that could be useful for us in France, because to take constitutional reform to the end in France, we need the agreement of the Senate, and when we have a government from a political side, which is not the one of the Senate, is always very difficult. And you understand that I'm talking about the current President of the Republic, that is not sustained by our Senate. And that leads me to the second remark and the question. Don't you have introduced a new problem in the Constitution, the Italian Constitution, by putting aside this perfect or egalitarian two-chamber system with a new one about the constitutional amendment? Because tomorrow, if, for example, the government wants to amend the Article 170 about the regions and about the competence of the region, perhaps taking back the competence today for the regions and tomorrow back to the states, and you have now a Senate with a veto right on the constitutional amendment, on this very point of all the constitution, but of the competence of the regions, and the Senate is representing specifically the region, very probably the Senate will disagree with this region. Even if government, perhaps people, the chamber, everybody agree with it, but not the Senate, then 100% or 51% can block that amendment, and it's the same that we have in France. So my question is, why did you maintain this equal two-chamber system on the constitutional amendment, and didn't you give a final word to the chamber or to the people for the constitutional amendment on that point? Thank you.
This is the reason why we are using now all the regional competencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because in future, I think it will be more difficult to read.
Sure.
Yes, very nice. Answer to you.
Another question, please? You can stand up, please. Your name?
Emmanuel Castellarin, I'm lecturer here at Panthéon. And I have a very simple question. Is there anything which France might learn from the Italian reform?
The third one, please.
Hi, I'm a PhD student in economics here at Sorbonne. I'd like to address just a question, very simple, concerning the regions. As far as I understand, out of the Senate, many regions will have, let's say, an additional voice. So my question is related to which will be the criteria to make these distinctions among regions which will have this additional voice and which are not, because obviously we're saying many regions will have more people. In Italy, for instance, Lombardy has a higher population, or for instance, higher productivity, so it will be just related to that. And eventually in practice, how will it work? So this process. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I don't know how we made it, but I think we are different from the past. We are a new generation, not only because we are younger than others in the past, but because maybe we are crazy, I don't know, but we are brave. We don't think that we have to stay forever at the government or in parliament. We must have these responsibilities to govern our country, just if we are able to change our country. If we can't, we have to do something else. I can come back to be a lawyer, as before. We can't stay, we can't remain to lead our country, because Italy needs to change, not only for constitutional reform. I think it's very important the institutional architecture to guarantee more efficiency to all the system and to be a solid basis for other reforms. But we have approved several reforms. I think the labor market reform, this is the suggestion for France, for the reforms in France. I think it's a good idea to reform the labor market, and I think our reform could be a good model maybe for some aspects, not for all, of course, but for some aspects. And the public administration too, and the taxation, just in 20 months. And so I think that or we have this kind of courage, and also the courage to ask to our citizens if they agree or not with these constitutional reforms, because it's a very big reform, and it's important that citizens can vote and can decide if they want this reform or not. But I think it's a proof of courage also to hold a referendum, to ask to citizens if they agree or not, because it's important for the government life also, the result of referendum. But I think that to have the possibility, the opportunity to become a member of government and to have the opportunity to change your country, it's incredible. And it's more incredible if you are 34 years old. But I think you have to use all the time. You have to change everything without losing time. And I think this is the difference. And citizens feel and understand the difference. And I think they are with us in this battle. We will see next year with the referendum, of course. But I think that the citizens' pressure for the change in our country is important also for other politicians, for other MPs. They can't oblige that citizens want to change and to have a system more efficient and also less costs than today. Because to have less politicians, it doesn't mean that you have less politics. I think it's very important to have politics, because I don't think that the councillors, the technical responses that are very important to give to politicians the instruments to work and to choose are fundamental. But politicians have the duty, not the right, the duty to decide and to make choices, because this is our job, just for a period, not for all the life, not for forever, just for a period, the period in which citizens choose you, trust in you. But you can lose time, and maybe in the future someone can think that we haven't do a good job now, maybe, I don't know. But I think nobody in the future can say that we have lost the opportunity to change our country, because we are trying to do it every day. And I think this is the most important goal for us. And we decided not to change the constitutional reform process and to recognize the same powers to Senate in constitutional reforms also for the future, because it's a sort of guarantee for the democracy, because if you have just one chamber which can change constitution, and at the moment you have also an electoral law with a majority premium, it's hard to think that a single party can change our constitution also for the future. And so we could choose a different system, for example, to have a higher majority to approve the constitutional reform in the future, as in other countries in which there is just one chamber. But we have preferred to maintain the powers of both chambers in order to guarantee more citizens also in the future. And at the same time also in Germany, the High Court has the same powers in constitutional laws and constitutional reforms